Roll up, roll up. It's time to test your luck around the streets of Las Vegas. My name is Ruby Price, and welcome to the Grid Talk podcast, where today we're previewing the 2025 Las Vegas Grand Prix. Joining me today is an ensemble of Grid Talk favourites, starting with George Howson,
Good afternoon.
Tom Horrocks,
Hello.
and Owain Medford.
Hi.
Hello. So let's get started, as always, with some of our favourite memories of Las Vegas. George, we might not have had a lot of Grand Prix here in recent years, but what stands out for you?
Yeah, only two to really pick from this one. It's a relatively recent one to the calendar. For me, I think the surprise really of last year of both Mercedes absolutely bossing it. I mean, George Russell dominated that race from the start, and then Hamilton had an amazing comeback from like 10th on the grid to finish in second. You know, it was a real resurgence. A lot of people. Because I think it was the same as this year, where it was Brazil right before this one, and people were like saying, "Oh, is Hamilton going to just leave? He's just going to walk." He's saying he wants to go on holiday. Is that code for him just throwing the towel in? Is he ever going to come back to F1? But he came back and had one of his best drives really in the last three or so years for Mercedes. It was really great to see, and just the fact as well that we have a race around the streets of Las Vegas. Of course, it's commercialized, it's cheesy, it's all those bad things, but the fact that we have that Formula One has achieved that I think is impressive. Although I don't think the locals will really agree with me on that one.
No, we'll get to that in a second. But Tom, anything else that you've particularly enjoyed about having a Las Vegas Grand Prix throughout the years?
I really enjoyed Alan Jones's win in 1981. That was phenomenal. No, not even I'm old enough to know that. Only just. I was born in 82. So Michele Alboreto, I was there, little baby on my mum's knee watching that win. No, I think it's, as George said, it's great having a Grand Prix in Las Vegas. It's great that we finally cracked America and we got that. And although the circuit doesn't look particularly engaging, I think because it is so simple, there is some elements that lead to decent racing sometimes. I mean, I think sometimes people overthink things and try and create these amazing sequences of corners when then sometimes you just need something different, and it is something different. I'm not saying it's the best racing to watch in the world. It's very much like the Sakir Grand Prix in 2020. It's just bonkers, but it's not been terrible to watch, and I think there's been some great circuits out there that have had terrible races, and this has never been. Obviously, we've got a very small sample set, but we've only had two races here. But they've not been bad races, so I'm happy for it to, from a racing perspective, for it to remain, because it is just something different, and it throws something in there that teams, obviously the time of day, climatic conditions, and everything, it's not always something that people can prepare for as well as other races. So you throw something in the mix. I'd quite like to see a sprint here, actually, but I don't think that'll happen. But it would be interesting.
Stick that on a t-shirt or a social media graphic. Tom Horrocks, it's not been terrible with some like word style graphics and things like that as well. But yeah, absolutely. It's more of the spectacle of having Formula One in Las Vegas. The car, it's a night race, so the cars always look good. The sparks, the speed, and the simplicity of it as well, apart from maybe one section of the circuit. But Wayne, we know Vegas is there because F1 wants it there, and seemingly a lot more than the locals do as well, with a lot of complaints about the disruption it causes. I think I've seen that some businesses are reporting that they actually make a loss on the weekends of the Las Vegas Grand Prix just due to the reduced accessibility of it all. But it's only been back for 2 years. But if we were to lose the Las Vegas Grand Prix again, what legacy would it leave behind?
I want to just be a real pedant and say it was actually the Caesars Palace Grand Prix in 1981 to 1984. And this is the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and therefore it's completely different.
And this isn't two secs. You don't get any points for that.
I don't care that I'll be honest with you, I'm just taking the win on my pedantry. But ultimately, I don't think, to answer your question, it's going to become like, if it were to go away and this were the last race we'd run here, I don't think that we'd get people longing for it to be back. I don't even think it's got kind of I'm going to call it the Mario Kart appeal of the Sakir Grand Prix, of like, that's like, real sim racing's fun a lot of the time, but everybody loves Mario Kart, like, from time to time. And I think the thing about the Las Vegas Grand Prix is that, yes, it's got a huge novelty value of a big whack and great straight, awkward climatic conditions for the teams to deal with, kind of a unique surface. And I just think that it's more going to be kind of like the Indian Grand Prix or the Korean Grand Prix, where, as much as like there's these big showpiece events that were meant to sort of show the expansion of the sport. I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that it's just not going to make an impression really, and there isn't much to remember about it beyond sort of big accidents or kind of wacky things that have happened. So for me, like if you'd ask me my memories, I'm thinking of like when the drains came up, in that first practice session, or the mess of the organization in the other stuff. Like I'm thinking of things around it rather than anything that particularly came from the Grand Prix itself. Maybe that's just me being, remembering it badly. But on the other hand, I think maybe it's kind of the job of the thing of the event to sort of impress itself, and it just hasn't really done that for me. I will say that it's not going anywhere. I think it's too big to fail. It's had too much money poured into it. This is F1 FOM's baby. Like this is Liberty Media's baby, and they're not going to let it go away, despite what people say. They've spent far too much money, and I think they see it maybe as a benefit to the sport in general to have a race in the entertainment capital of the world, self-proclaimed. And to answer Tom in the chat, the Caesars Palace Grand Prix, I'm just going off Wikipedia that it said the number of times held is 4. It might not have held a championship Grand Prix or anything, but the actual event was held that.
There's a couple of IndyCar races as well.
Good
so I didn't know we talked about IndyCar on this podcast, but there we go.
Well, at least we haven't talked about endurance racing yet. We've got Owain on the show, but it's not happened yet.
What yet?
Exactly. But yeah, absolutely. The legacy of the Las Vegas Grand Prix is generally around things that happened not during the Grand Prix. But what did happen during the Grand Prix in 2024 was that Max Verstappen sealed his 4th consecutive driver's title. And George, mathematically, Lando can't do the same this weekend, but with his recent form, he's really put one hand on the trophy, and the title could really be his in all but name after the race.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got 3 rounds left, albeit one of those rounds does have a sprint race. There's slightly more points available for Qatar after this one, but he's basically a race win ahead of his teammate. He's basically 2 wins ahead of Max Verstappen as well. So he's looking very, very good from that point of view. It's realistic going off of that it's possible because that he could take Verstappen out of the title fight this year because, even though he did clinch the championship last year, Max was not that good in terms of his pace overall. The Red Bull did seem to struggle in the relatively cool conditions, and I haven't looked at the forecast, but I imagine it's going to be the same because it's Las Vegas in November. It is cold. People think it's this sweltering hot desert, and it is in the summer, but in the winter it's cold, particularly at night, obviously, when these sessions are run as well. But yeah, I mean, all he needs to do, if he just outscores Piastri in this round and also in Qatar as well, he's won the championship. Because he's 24 points ahead now, 25 for a race victory. If he's 26 or more ahead going into Abu Dhabi, he's champion. Doesn't even have to turn up for the last race, So it's looking really, really good for him. And people say that, Lando's a bottle job, that he's not got enough kind of gumption around him, for lack of a better term, when it comes to, just sealing the deal. But at the end of the day, this is the second time that he's had a title fight. And some people might even argue it's the first time he's had a title fight because he never really got that close to Max Verstappen last year in terms of the points battle. So, so he's relatively inexperienced in that. And I think he's really learned from it. And we've seen a real turning point. It threatened after Canada, where they had that crash, where it was all on Lando, where Lando easily could have just caved. He could have easily just fallen apart really because it was a really embarrassing moment for him, but he owned it. He went away, had a few weeks break, and since then, by and large, he has been the better driver. There have been times when Piastri's been better than him, sure, but by and large, over that period, you look at the point swing, and it's been really impressive how he's done this. And unfortunately, Piastri, because it's his first time in a title fight, he's not really got the experience to draw on. You look at even his title fights in the likes of Formula 2 and Formula 3, his rise during that time, he was absolutely dominant in some of them seasons. He's never really had to kind of come back from being behind. But, he'll use this as a learning experience. And he's just got to go out there, Piastri, and do his best. But he's not. I mean, neither driver's really had the best record when it comes to Las Vegas in these 2 years, particularly Lando in that first year crashed out after a couple laps. So all bets are off when it comes to predicting what's going to happen. Sorry, I had to say that. I had to get that in at some point.
All of the gambling puns that we're going to be subjected to this weekend, and we're starting it off as well. But yes, certainly, a decent performance this season, I think, from Lando. And I think Tom and Joad were saying on the driver rating show for Sao Paulo that Lando really has kind of shaken off that whole bottling the starts thing as well. He's absolutely aced the starts recently. And, if you're putting your chips on somewhere, it would be on Lando to, ace the start recently. But yeah, Tom, is it already too late then for Oscar Piastri to start to rein in his more experienced teammate? And particularly after that troublesome weekend in Brazil. But what's really put him in this position when just a few races ago, he was the one on top?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's too late. There is, he's definitely given himself a difficult job to do, but it's definitely not too late. Things can change very, very quickly. I mean, if you look back to, I just think, look at where we would be had it not been for the engine failure in Holland in Zandvoort. Like at that point, add 18 points to Lando Norris's total, and we're going into this weekend being a championship decider. So, but equally, there's been some good luck on Lando's side that has pretty much evened out that one engine failure. So I think it's been kind of a bit cost neutral, that problem there. So, but that could happen again. Yeah, we never did find out, to my knowledge, if that engine was salvageable. So it may well be that he's running low on parts again. So there is probably could still be a possibility that might either cause a grid drop or some kind of problem in the last few races. But I think it's going to be difficult because this Grand Prix is, as we found out in recent weeks, Piastri's only current shortfall in that is very low grip. And he does struggle in those low grip conditions we've seen in the last few races, something we weren't really aware of at the start of the season because McLaren were so dominant. But since they switched to taps off in Austria, switched taps off before then, but their last upgrade came to the car in Austria. It's been the same car ever since. It's just kind of when they've been having to push it that little bit harder, closer to the edge, Norris has just been closer to the maximum. And I think what we've seen is the narrative throughout the season is that Norris started off, looked like he was a slightly quicker driver, but was making more errors, and he wasn't able to maximize qualifying races with a car that was slower last year where he was putting it on pole. He wasn't able to put it on pole in a faster car, which showed there was something not right with the car for him. Now that he's got to grips with that, he's then become the faster driver. So I think it is going to be difficult, but Piastri is so close. It's the tiniest of margins. One little error in qualifying from Norris, and then Piastri, his first, Norris down in sixth. He has a bad race. He's the one that hits the barrier. Piastri wins the race. It's done and dusted. I think the most important thing for this weekend for him is not to panic. What he just needs to do is maximize his race weekend and try and finish ahead of Lando. If he can just get back to within those, I mean, I know he's 24 points behind, isn't he? So just get closer to, under 18 points, that kind of thing. Just close in as many points as possible. I think going into Qatar, incredibly grippy circuit. He's got great form there. McLaren are expected to be strong on a track with high grip where he's got a good record and his, massive long F1 career so far. I think he is the favourite for me, provided he's okay. He's the guy that will probably win Qatar. So if he can just close in on Lando, bring it down to like 18 points, win the race in Qatar, all of a sudden it's 10, 11 points going into Abu Dhabi. That's something that could realistically happen. Now, I'm not saying it's nailed on, but that's just one problem. That's just one Latifi in a wall away from something crazy happening and then championship swinging. I definitely, the championship could be done and dusted before Abu Dhabi, but I don't think it will. I don't think it's going to be quite as straightforward as that, because you've got some guy in the Red Bull who really likes to spoil plans like that. So I'm pretty sure that he will have one more say in the title battle. So yeah, don't rule anything out yet, not even a Max Verstappen.
No, you can never rule out Max Verstappen at the very least. At least not whilst he's still in mathematical contention. And some very interesting, I think, words were said about Max Verstappen season earlier on this week regarding Barcelona as well, in that particular regard. But, that's a topic for another day. Because Owain, it was an emphatic victory from George Russell in the race here last year, with his ex-teammate Lewis Hamilton sharing the podium. With temperatures forecast to be low once again and Antonelli seemingly finding his form, might we see another excellent display from the black and silver arrows?
I'm fairly confident we will. I think the characteristics of the car are kind of the same fundamentally, particularly in this last year of the rule cycle. And as you said, sort of the form of them really ticked up in that sort of last race. Sorry, in that Grand Prix last year. Obviously, titanium dioxide is legal in the United States, so Kimi Antonelli will be coming in fighting, which is a ridiculous set of correlation and causation that I had to pick up on. But otherwise, I think it's the sort of track that really does suit Mercedes. I mean, it's not, as mentioned, it's low grip, but also they've struggled so much with sort of ride control and things like that. And that's something you kind of don't have to do at Las Vegas. It's got an elevation change of going up like one of those little steps, you have to get into an old kitchen sometimes. It is, we talk about billiard table smooth, but it is so flat. There's barely any elevation change whatsoever. There's probably more elevation change in the camber of some of the corners than anything else, or going over a curb. And that really does seem to suit the Mercedes. Plus, you can run the engines a little bit harder. You don't have, you've got this, it's not obviously the coolest air in the world, but it's also not the sort of the most dense, but it does just sort of allow you to run those engines a bit harder and really throw everything behind the tires. I think that's going to be a particularly big thing with where it seems to be the Mercedes has seemed to retain a little bit of a characteristic. We've seen them running the medium tires a number of times this year to sort of better effect over the other teams. And I think it's because they are still a little bit harder on their tires than a number of other teams. And that really does suit you when you've got trouble with tire warm up. So I think that's, another area where we're looking at the performance of the Mercedes and wondering why it's increasing around Las Vegas, or at least it did last year. And I think they can translate that to this year because they still seem to have that, problem at other tracks, but it's a benefit here. So for that reason, I think, we're going to see a stronger weekend for Mercedes, just given those sort of those characteristics and things coming towards them. Sometimes it is just that. It also helps that they've got one of the more powerful engines on the grid, and that really helps when you've got a really, really long straight like the Las Vegas strip. So I think it's going to be a strong weekend for Mercedes again, just based off that.
It's the kind of circuit where if it was 2017, 2018, you'd expect to see the likes of Force India, Williams, and the Mercedes just all sort of like dominating the top 6-7 spots of the results. But it looks like a potentially good weekend for Mercedes, which, let's talk about a team that, might not necessarily have the most positive of weekends. But, after their hopes for a good race in Brazil disappeared quicker than Sky Sports' Halo platform, Ferrari's drivers were intense criticism from their chairman. George, firstly, where does the problem lie? And now they've fallen back to 4th in the standings. Can they beat Red Bull on track in Las Vegas?
I think they can beat one of the Red Bulls on track in Las Vegas, but two of them, I'm not too sure. Yeah, I mean, Ferrari, man, they got problems away from the track. They really do. I mean, they've gone down from 2nd to 4th in the Constructors' Championship as a result of their absolutely torrid weekend in Brazil, in fairness. Double retirement in the Grand Prix. Not that many points during this sprint as well. So, it's a big gap as well. I mean, they've obviously only just fallen a little bit behind Red Bull, but it's a big gap to Mercedes. And coming into, like Owain rightfully says, I mean, I think Mercedes are going to do well this weekend too. Coming into a track where they're expected to do well. I mean, 36 points. I mean, you can only get a maximum score of 43. And we all know Ferrari aren't getting a 1-2 this weekend. So, it's going to take a miracle for them to get back to 2nd. There's a chance they could beat Red Bull. Yeah, I think given the performance of Max and given the lack of performance of Yuki Tsunoda, they probably will outscore Red Bull this weekend. But, you wouldn't really bet your house on it. You really wouldn't do. And yeah, we've got to mention about the quotes in the press as well. I mean, John Elkann doing his best Rihanna impression, just saying "shut up and drive" pretty much to the drivers. It's quite embarrassing, and it's also quite ironic as well how he says that in the press and says "stick to the driver." Why don't you just stick to your job, mate, and run the team, run the organization? I'm sorry, but come on, it's a bit ironic you saying that. And maybe it's lost in translation a little bit. I'm not fluent in Italian. He said it in Italian. I don't know if that's exactly what he said, but he hasn't come out and said that that's wrong, that he's been quoted wrong. So I imagine that's probably literally what he's told them. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I could talk about Ferrari all day when it comes to this, but for me, the biggest problem with Ferrari this season, I mean, this is just my theory, and given how Ferrari are, it's probably right. I think they've made a car that they can't extract the full potential of. They showed the full potential of it in China in that sprint race, and then they showed that if they run that car really low, really aggressively, it can't survive the Grand Prix. The plank wears down too much and they'll be disqualified. So I think that's part of the problem. They can't really extract all the performance of it. I think there is the bare bones of a great car in there, but it just can't survive a Grand Prix distance. That's just my theory. We'll never know. Ferrari are very secretive about stuff like this, as are all the teams to an extent. So, the drivers are not a problem. The drivers are not a problem. I mean, Charles Leclerc is a brilliant Formula One driver. He is incredible, genuinely, right? I really, really rate him highly. And yeah, I mean, and Hamilton, I mean, people have been itching to write off Hamilton since about 2007, in his first season, when in their words, he blew the title and all this and that. People have been itching to write him off for years and years, but he's still the most successful Formula One driver of all time. He is. That's a fact. He's achieved more than anybody else has. I'm not saying he's the best of all time. I'm just saying his achievements say that he's the most successful of all time. So they're not bad. They're not bad drivers. It's the car. The car is the problem. So maybe John Elkann should shut up and tell Fred Vasseur to get them a better car. And maybe they'll do that in 2026. I don't know. But yeah, it's just Ferrari. There's always drama. There's always drama with Ferrari. They are one race away from implosion.
Quick follow-up. Do you think Lewis Hamilton would rather be in the current Ferrari car or the U13? If that's the one I'm thinking of.
I think it's 16 or whatever, but yeah, I think right now on current performance, I think that Mercedes is better. Yeah, I think he'd rather be on the Mercedes. I mean, he even said another quote after the race. He said that he's living a nightmare right now at Ferrari. So I think he'd rather be in the Merc, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, not a five-star drive car from Ferrari at the very least, but a five-star podcast. If that's what you think we are, we'd love it if you could take 5 seconds to leave us a five-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you're not already subscribed on the platform you're listening, hit that subscribe button. It takes less than 2 seconds to engage in that form. And, it certainly helps us out quite a bit. But, just 20 points separate Racing Bulls in P6 and Sauber back in P9, Tom. And I think it shows just how close the midfield really is, with any team having the potential to have a slightly good day and being able to seize the initiative in that championship battle for just a little bit more sponsorship money. Well, sponsorship money, prize money, but potentially more sponsors coming as a result of finishing higher. But which of the midfield teams can you see doing well here?
Well, I think the best midfield team this weekend will probably be Ferrari. I think they'll, I think it's, I mean, Ferrari probably will be leading that pack anyway. But the teams there, you got Williams, Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, Haas, and Sauber. Let's all just assume that Alpine are going to revert to type because they're a great Brazilian Grand Prix weekend. But you never know. There's not a lot of corners to worry about, so they might be all right. I think my gut says Williams, but they like McLaren, did turn the taps off very early. There's been no real updates to that car. Aston Martin looks like it can be a good car, but only in certain situations, and those situations do not lend themselves to Las Vegas. I think Qatar, they'll be strong, but they won't be strong in Las Vegas. So I think we can rule out Aston Martin. So take out the A's. So really, it's going to be between Haas, Sauber, and Racing Bulls. Now, I think Racing Bulls, I think... No, I'm going to change that. I think it's probably going to be Haas are going to lead that battle because since their upgrade in Austin, that car has been a genuine threat for Q3 all the time. Now, I don't know if that update has taken the direction away from Esteban Ocon. We know Esteban Ocon is not a bad driver. I mean, he was a match for Fernando Alonso 3 years ago, so he's certainly not a bad driver. Yes, we know that Ollie Behrman is quick, if not inexperienced and a little bit crashy sometimes. So they're definitely, I think that Haas are probably going to be the strongest out of those three. A bit of a revival for Racing Bulls in Brazil. I think that was more of a false dawn for them. I think that'll be their last big points haul of the season. So I think probably we're going to see it's going to be the Haas with Sauber and Racing Bulls fighting out for maybe some bottom end points. But I think we'll be seeing at least one Haas in Q3. So a really strong job here. I mean, they're 8th in the championship. They're 12 points off 6th place. So there's a good chance that they could actually get that 6th place, which is, sorry, not 6th place. They're 12 points off 7th place. No, yes, 12 points off 6th place. Yes, I'm doing maths bad. Math's not good. So I think there is a strong chance that they might be able to claim that 6th place. 5th place, they're not going to get another 30 points or 40 points to catch up to Williams. But I think Williams have finally got that nailed on, and they've been helped by the fact that Sauber, Haas, and Aston Martin and Racing Bulls have all got better and been taking points off each other. I thought Aston Martin were just going to be on a tear towards Williams towards the end of the season, but as it is, they've managed to score just enough points to stay ahead in that battle, and that podium for Sainz was definitely a good shout. Yeah, I just think Williams are probably going to drop this weekend, but I think there's definitely a chance for Ollie Behrman to continue his strong form. So I think look out for the Hasses this weekend is the short answer.
A good answer, a good suggestion as well. They clearly have unlocked some pace, but seemingly locked away some pace for Esteban Ocon, as you rightly pointed out. It has been almost worrisome for Esteban since the summer break almost, because I thought he was doing quite well at the midpoint of the season, but it just hasn't been there recently. And, just, yeah, a good showing from Haas as a team and as an organization. Ayo Komatsu is doing a really good job there, I think, this season. And, I look forward to seeing what they do with a fresh set of regulations next time around. But, Owain, after an atrocious home race last time out in Sao Paulo, do you think Gabby Bortoleto will be hoping for a much more anonymous race in Vegas, or are the chips going on red, black, and silver for something a bit more special?
I think you've got to go all out, don't you? Like, obviously, you don't want to be running into anyone, but it's Las Vegas as much as it's. I don't want to be the person that says, "Oh, anything can happen." It's a street circuit. Particularly, we actually haven't seen that much of it. We haven't seen any sort of crazy races that you might see in Baku, even though the similarities to the track in terms of layout are kind of obvious. As you say, it was a really, really bad weekend, and I think his main thing has got to be just don't run into anyone and don't hit the walls. Like it's and try and pick up what you can. Sauber's they're in the business of picking up points where they can, and as much as it's a difficult fight and it's quite close because of it, it's got to be, they really have got to be just sort of surviving. I think that's, above the other teams that, you can kind of guarantee that something's going to happen. You just don't want to be at the center of it. So you don't want to get involved in the melee, and you want to kind of pick up the points where you can. I know that sounds, it's easy for me to say in my, here, but, and much more difficult. But I don't know if the pressure maybe got to him, or he just got, just got really unlucky really with that, with the sort of performance in Brazil. But, it's a new week. He's got to just knuckle down himself and just kind of just pull out a decent performance. I mean, a lot of it, in the midfield fight, you're really looking for someone else to have an accident or a mistake rather than sort of do any heroics and kind of hope you get lucky. Like looking at the points values, that a lot of them haven't increased by, because they're fighting over 4 places. Let's be honest, at the bottom for the points, they haven't increased that much since sort of Great Britain, really. So in terms of Sauber, at least. So for that, it's kind of do what you can. Don't run into anyone, like I say. Don't hit the walls, and just kind of not take it easy, but try and have a mature weekend, I guess.
Go on, Owain, get your racing wheel out and turn off all the assists and do a better job than Gabby Bortoleto in those Sao Paulo conditions.
And get my room up to 50 degrees, and then and then all the other stuff.
Yeah, put your money where your mouth is. Become a Formula One driver in your bedroom and show Gabby how it should be done. But no, like it is obviously a very tough job and a lot of very stressful situations and stuff as well. But the crash damage total that I saw reported, like for just Sao Paulo for Gabby Bortoleto, like particularly in the cost cap era, is a staggeringly large number. Like it was in the millions, and that's the kind of thing that you kind of like there being like, well, at least they've got the Audi money. That's a positive. They're not just waiting for it. They've got that to be able to spend it at the very least. But yes. Lastly, before we get into our predictions for the weekend, I think we need to talk about Formula One's rules of engagement because, funnily enough, it's been in the news, particularly after a very divisive collision and penalty justification during the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. And George, you weren't on our Sao Paulo review, so first of all, I'm going to come to you just to get a quick, précis of what you thought happened, but also, are the rules of engagement clear enough in Formula One? Because a lot of justification for it to not be a penalty to Oscar, a lot of justification for it to be a penalty to Oscar. So just take it away.
It's so tough because people say that, we want the rules to be simple, we want the rules to be easy, but to kind of paraphrase what Johan Cruyff said about football, football's a simple game, but to play it simply is quite complicated. And Formula One's a little bit like that as well, because you've got so many different scenarios, so many different things around Formula One. Every single incident is different. Every single one is unique. All the tracks are different. The drivers are different. The conditions are different. The tires are different. Stages in the race are different as well. You know, you take lap one incidents and first corner incidents differently than what you do for the rest of the Grand Prix. You know, it's different situations. And I understand both sides of the argument because at the end of the day, Piastri's gone down the inside and he had the right to go down the inside, and it was going 3 wide into a corner that is quite tricky to even go 2 wide into, going into the center S. It's downhill, you can't really see where you're going, you can't see the second part of the kind of elongated chicane sort of layout for that, and you need to make sure you get a good exit from that. Otherwise you're going to go down that second straight and you're going to get DRS'd and you're going to get passed anyway yourself. So it's really, really difficult, and it is hard to see. I mean, this is something that, again, a lot of people that don't know Formula One maybe as well, maybe not aware of. The mirrors in these Formula One cars are as much use as a chocolate teapot a lot of the time. They are terrible, and the visibility out of these cars is awful. You know, it's really, really difficult to see out of them. So to even see a driver that is next to you is quite tough at times, particularly, again, around a corner that is not flat. It is quite cambered. It is very difficult to see what's going on. But then it's impossible, literally impossible, to see another car on the other side, Charles Leclerc, the innocent victim in all this. I do really feel for Charles Leclerc in that. It's just how Antonelli escaped that without any major damage, I do not know. He got second place, obviously, in that. So I understand the argument that says, well, Piastri was just going for a gap. He was going for an overtake. He's going for that championship. He's got to go for it. And I agree for it. I agree he had to go for it. I totally understand that. But I also get the argument that if he doesn't go for it, then there's probably no problem there. But you could also say that about the other two guys too, Antonelli and Leclerc. So it's a really, really difficult one. It's a really, really tough one. And I get both sides of the argument, but this is Formula One. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. And when you take those kind of chances, sometimes it works out and you're a world beater. And it's like, oh, that's the move that could get Piastri back into the championship battle. But as it was the move that cost Piastri several places and a 10-second penalty. So I get both sides of the argument with this one. For me, I said overall, I can understand why they gave a penalty, but I also wouldn't have batted too much of an eyelid if they didn't. So the stewards were in a very difficult position with that because we know what the F1 fans are like. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't when it comes to that.
My opinion, very similar to George, actually. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, he's got every right to go for that. That's a valid overtake attempt, which it was. Then on second look, I know it's just a lock-up. Now, I know he still kept it under control and was still in control at the time. And then that kind of changed my opinion slightly. And then after watching it a few more times, I was like, do you know what? Looking at the racing rules, the penalty is absolutely correct. The problem is the racing rules. So if we're just talking about Piastri's incidents, yes, I 100% agree now after looking back at it that was a valid penalty based on the racing guidelines. Sorry, we can't say rules. The racing and to be honest, there is the baked-in ambiguity. If you're referring to something as a guideline, then it's allowing you to break those rules instantly. Now, the trouble is F1 has got exactly what they want. As George said, if you have people want simple rules and then they want consistency. I'm sorry, but you can't have both. You can't. I guarantee we've had this before where they started over-regulating the sport, putting more and more in, and then people say, no, Christian Horner, just let them race. Yeah, and then you let them race, and then we end up with a situation like we had in 2021 where things weren't being regulated correctly. So we say, we need to have hard and fast rules. So then they say, okay, we're going to have the white line as the edge of the track. You can't go over the track. Your lap time is deleted. Fantastic. Consistency. That's all we want. Why are we getting all these penalties? Because people are going over the white line. It's very difficult to see the white line. Just let them race. It's just going to keep going round and round in circles. So people just need to chill out. Like, let the referees ref the race. I think what would help, not going to solve the problem, because let's be honest, football have had professional referees for a very long time now, and it's not as if that stopped controversy in refereeing. So yes, professional stewarding would definitely be a help, and would love to see that. I'm not saying the stewards are doing a bad job. I just think we need to have people that are professional in that they're being paid to what they do and they have the consistency there. We have a pool of 6 people and that's it. And then they, 4 out of those 6 go to every race. And then that's it. They can have independent advisors, or not advisors. Advice is not the word I'm looking for. Like people observing and being part of the conversations, but not having any kind of say in that. That's going to help. but I think they're trying to cover everything. What they're doing is very similar to McLaren's papaya rules. They're trying to cover every situation with one, not one rule, but trying to come up with a rule for every situation. But then inevitably things will come up that they don't think of or have never happened before, unprecedented. So it's just not going to work. They need to have a system where it is a framework to allow the professional stewards to make their decision based on the evidence available, not this is it. This is what you have to do, because then there will be inconsistencies. So yeah, I think it does need simplifying, but simplifying with a little bit of nuance.
Yeah, just thinking about what you're saying and what you said, George, is that, and a lot of the issues that I think of, and I get to bring it up now, is the World Endurance Championship, which is kind of the closest you'd get maybe to, there's a lot more passing that's going along there, and you may mock, but the thing is, it is the closest top flight motorsport that kind of fits the FIA's way of going racing. And you don't have any of these problems. And the reason you don't have any of these problems is, one, because the racing is a little bit longer, sort of a longer format, but also because there's not this obsession with trying to get everything right in the Grand Prix. And I know that that's a bad product. So you've got that kind of tension there at the heart of what FOM and the FIA and everyone is trying to do. And you're trying to get everything resolved by the end of 305 kilometers, right? And the issue that I think the issue is that Formula One has, as you say, these weird rules where we're taking sort of a head at the apex, or having to be a certain amount alongside. And yeah, I think that's significantly alongside is a good place to start from, of like earning the right to racing room in the corner. But beyond that, we shouldn't have, oh well, I had my front axle ahead at some at some deflappatory point, and that's going to be difficult because to even set those points and have this single rule set that works for everywhere, because we are dealing with differently to football or rugby, where there are sort of beyond the sort of defined range of limits of pitch size, we've got 24 different fields of play with infinite unique characteristics. Like turn one at Brazil, as we know, like as we were just describing, it's not flat. It is completely different to turn one at Baku or Austria or anything like that. Like they're just fundamentally different scenarios, and it's very, very difficult for the stewards to sort of, I guess, apply the rules evenly when, because of the way that the sport is, it's going to be unique every single time. And I think what the sport maybe needs to decide is whether we want the stewards to be able to either deliberate and come up with the solution that annoys everyone equally, which would probably be the best compromise, and that's going to take a lot of time, and it's not going to have things fit into the nice 2-hour window that is sort of necessary for professional sport to be broadcast and sort of accessible to the masses. Or are we wanting people to be able to take a little bit of agency? And I think the idea of maybe a pool of 6 and actually a set of 3 stewards, one of which is a former top level driver, would maybe be better. And they sort of take a vote on it using the rules, and what their decision is go. You can't have a hung steward panel there, and I'm sure that there's issues with what I'm suggesting, but the idea, allow them to take a bit of agency, make their own decision, and gradually it'll average out. I don't mean asking the drivers the drivers themselves on sort of, I don't know whether what Tom's bringing up in the chat is asking the drivers who are actually as part of it or anything like that. But I think every other sport has this doesn't have this obsession with, well, we've got to find out what the driver knew. That doesn't happen in rugby. Like, if you do something, it's plain as day. They ask for they see if there's some mitigating circumstances, and you know what? If you've done a high tackle or brought someone over over 90 degrees in rugby, you just get a yellow card, and that's what happens. Like, that's it. So I think there needs to be more agency for the stewards to be able to make their own decision, and that be it. If you want to have races have all these decisions figured out within a few minutes, or maybe or even just have another system for the boring stuff, like if people have done a speeding in the pit lane or whatever, have that done out to another team, and the actual driver stewards themselves should only concern themselves with incidents between two or more drivers on track. I'm throwing out solutions here, but I think the idea that we need to get this right every time and it'd be perfect is kind of ridiculous. Obviously, that should be the aim, but I think ultimately human beings are fallible, and we need to accept that.
Yeah, absolutely. We are fallible and we do get things wrong from time to time. But, I do think something needs to happen in terms of Formula One, because every single race there is something that happens that is controversially, repercussive, and it affects the championship. It affects how people view the sport. And, you know, as was rightly pointed out, like some things should just constitute the right way that the rules are applied and stuff. Like this has happened. Cool. Doesn't matter what you think. There's no context to it. This is what happens and stuff like that. So yeah. And I agree. We don't need to concern the drivers every single time it happens either. And, we certainly shouldn't be conferring with the teams because, you just got to look at Racing Bulls and Red Bulls, and whenever there's an instance between the two of them as to what happens and stuff like that as well. But, who knows what's going to happen this weekend? Let's make some predictions. So, George, I'm going to come to you first for your pole position, your podium, and a bold prediction. But given recent form, I think I know what your bold prediction is anyway, and it's not going to happen.
How can you have no faith in him? No faith in him. He's a guy. He's got a new contract. He's earned that completely on merit. No financial transactions in Argentine pesos were involved in that, I'm sure. Anyway. So yeah, I'm going quite bold in general in a sense, but I think given their form last year, and I think given their form at times this year as well, I think Mercedes are going to do really well here. I really, really do. I think they're going to do great. I think George Russell's going to win again, and I think he's going to get pole position. I think he's just going to be a cut above, to be honest. I really do. I can see him just kind of walking away with it like he did at Singapore a few months back. So I'm going to go for George for pole and the win. I'm going to go for Antonelli's been in good form recently, but I am going to go for Lando to be P2, just ahead of Antonelli. Antonelli's been excellent. He's really, really been doing good recently, but just 3 races in a row. Well, if you include obviously the sprint, obviously in Brazil too, 3 podiums in a row, I think it'd be amazing for him. I'm not going to go for 3 second places in a row. So yeah, Lando in P2, Antonelli in P3. The bold prediction, it's got to be. I've got to keep doing it. He was 14th here. 14th here 12 months ago, just 4 places higher. He's in the points. Colapinto, it has to happen. Surely he can't go the entire year without scoring a point. Surely not. He was meant to be an upgrade on Jack Doohan, and right now he's got the exact same points as him. Nil point. So you can't keep going through that, surely.
He's been 14th for most of the races this season, or at least between 14th and 16th at the very least. I'm not looking at my spreadsheet. And
I think that's even higher. I think it's higher than reality. I'm sure he's been like 18th, 19th quite a bit,
Yeah, the problem is, Stroll's got to finish somewhere as well, or not finish somewhere. Tom, your predictions, please.
This is going to be a first for me, actually. This is certainly first time this year I've made anything close to this kind of prediction, as Owen is scratching his chin in anticipation as he wants to catch me and pass me in the prediction standings. So I am going to go, because he just always does it, he'll always find a way. It's Max Verstappen on pole, and he will find a way in the race as well. So I'm going to go for a Max Verstappen win with George Russell in second. Again, Mercedes going to be very quick, so he's going to be there. There's going to be some kind of tears with those two, though. I'm sure they'll have arguments during the race. And I just got this feeling that he's going to shut up and drive. Charles Leclerc is going to round out the podium. So that means the bold prediction: first time McLaren are going to draw a blank all season. 0 points for McLaren going into Qatar. Max Verstappen tied on points with Piastri.
Well, that's bold, given how, at least, for at least one of their drivers, they've had such a almost clockwork in terms of finishing in the points and stuff like that as well. But yes, Owain, your predictions, please.
I'm going to be dead boring. I'm just going to go with pole for Russell. I still think they're going to be quick. I kind of convinced myself of it when talking about why the track characteristics suit them quite well. I'm not actually putting any stock whatsoever in Antonelli being affected by titanium dioxide legality. So I've got second as Verstappen, because he's Verstappen. And I think Piastri's going to get out of this sort of funk that he's been in, and I'm going to put him in third in the race. Lando Norris, nowhere to be seen on the podium there. And I'm going to jinx them now and say that Williams are going to be in the top 5, both of them, to round out that top 5. So as much as this race wasn't very good for them last year whatsoever, that's my prediction prediction on how well they're going to do.
And for the non-chronically online people, this titanium dioxide, was it that? I don't know. Seems to have just been a meme that's popped up regarding weird coincidence.
It genuinely does do better at races where in countries where titanium dioxide is legal as a food additive.
The things that you look at when you look for patterns. Don't put any stock in it whatsoever. But for me, in my chase of Owain for not last place in the prediction standings, I'm only 3 points away now before immediately falling back a bunch of points for the next Grand Prix. But I'm going to go with pole position George Russell. My podium is George Russell in P1. Unlike George, I'm going to put some stock in Kimi Antonelli of going for that third podium in P2 if you include the sprint. And then the other Ferrari driver is going to shut up and drive. And I've put Lewis Hamilton in P3, which is bold enough. But then I'm saying Gasly gets points as the actual pole position. So, not pole position, the bold prediction. There we go. It's the same amount of syllables, even if it's not. But yes, those are my predictions. And keep an eye out on social media for your predictions for the championship that's coming out later in the week. So, other than that, it's time to do some plugging. So, George, anything you want to plug at this point?
Yeah, I'm repping the merch for Formula Report, so I might as well mention that. If you want to hear more hot takes on the world of Formula One, which is a little bit less filtered, a little bit more explicit, you can go over to Formula Reports. We're on all the major social medias, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, probably a few more that I'm forgetting about too. But yeah. Thanks for asking me on and everything. It's been a good time.
It has been. Tom, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I'll give the Monkey Seat a plug. I mean, we just had a bit of a relaunch. We're now Grid Talk's little sis. We sit here drinking matcha with pink glitter subtitles and Gen Z slang. Hundreds of emojis, Slay Queen. No, apparently we've been cancelled. So, no, come and listen to the Monkey Seat, Grid Talk's dirty cousin, not their little sis. And basically, we just talk rubbish about Formula One. We were supposed to do a podcast this week, but then Carl's internet went down, so we weren't able to do one. So, that's the kind of great consistency you get with the Monkey Seat. We are far more consistent than FIA stewards. We don't podcast a lot.
Absolutely incredible. And Owain, anything you want to plug at this point?
Just our Grid Talk social channels where you can find the Prediction League and find out whether Ruby's entire plan to catch up to me is to predict the same things as me as a pole and a race win. I'm sure it's going to go super well.
There's the wild cards.
Yeah. No, you can find that on @GridTalkUK on all the social media platforms with the app where you can find out what we think and when we think, particularly at 4 a.m. watching the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Yeah, so that is available at GridTalkUK on all the social media platforms with the app.
Yeah, and if you want to hear anything else from me, I'm at Ruby Rose Price on Instagram, and I'll leave it at that. But Grid Talk is available on YouTube as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. Just search for Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with reactions and previews to the race results. Other way around, Ruby, read your script properly. Thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support the show further, why not sign up to our Patreon for exclusive content? And also make sure you subscribe to be the first to know when each new weekly episode is released. We'll be back soon with plenty more F1 content. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast, and goodbye.